Today I'm going to show you how to create this beautiful texture working what I call mini V's, and they're actually stacked mini V's. If you look very closely, you can see that there's these little tiny V's that are created with the stitches, and then they just kind of nestle into one another. This is a very, very easy stitch to crochet. It's very fun and gives it a little bit of an interesting look within the fabric that it creates. To create the stacked mini V, you're going to begin with a foundation row of even numbers. For today's, I believe I have 12 single crochets, and we're going to begin the stacked mini V's in the next row. So to begin, I'm using worsted weight yarn and a crochet hook eye. You're going to turn and chain 2. Now this is going to count as a half double crochet. So you're going to skip your first stitch, and in the next stitch you're going to work 2 half double crochets, both in the same stitch. So a mini V is essentially just a 2 double crochets worked in the same stitch. But you'll see how they create that V on the next row. So I just have 2 half double crochets in that stitch. We're going to skip the next stitch and work 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. And you're going to repeat this all the way across the row. Oops. Skip the next stitch, 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. Skip the next stitch and work 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. You're going to repeat this until there's 1 stitch left, because you're skipping that stitch. So it's actually like there's 2 stitches left. So there's 1, 2. So then you're going to skip the next stitch. So there's 1 stitch left. Okay, so you worked your mini V, skip the next stitch, there's 1 left, and just simply work a half double crochet into the top of that last stitch. So to create the pattern for the next row, you're going to chain 2 and turn. And as you can see, if you pull this apart, you can see that here's the 2 stitches worked into the same stitch. You're going to repeat this. You're going to skip the first stitch, and then you're going to crochet 2 half double crochets into the next. But instead of working in the top of the stitch, which is typically going to be like right here, you're going to drop down and you're going to work into the space between the stitches down here. So make sure you go underneath this back bar. So yarn over, skip the first stitch, and then work into the space between the next 2 stitches. And you're going to work your 2 half double crochets. You're going to skip the next stitch and then work into the center of the next mini V, which is in that space between the 2 half double crochets. So just work below that bar right there. And work your 2 half double crochets. And you're just going to repeat this all the way across your row. So skip the next stitch, work a mini V into the center of the next mini V. Right here. Okay, and you'll get to a point where you don't really have to look very closely to identify where to place that stitch. But for the first couple rows, just double check, make sure you're going underneath that bar and in the space. If you don't go into the space between the stitches and you work in the top of the stitches, you're not going to get that pretty texture. So you're going to repeat this to the end again. After you've worked your last mini V, you're going to skip the next stitch, and then you're going to work a half double crochet in the top of that chain 2, which is right here, to finish the row. And then you're going to continue to repeat by chaining 2, turning, skipping this first stitch, and then working into that space of the next V stitch and create your next mini V. Okay, you're going to repeat this all the way across your row. And again, you're going to end up having this beautiful texture that is created with these stacked mini V's.